Hello and welcome to Here Comes the Bride, The Church Begins, a look at Acts, the book of Acts, and we're just a brief devotional, an opportunity for us to study through it. We are in Acts chapter 12, beginning in verse 1. Hello there, I am Jim Devore, pastor of Cornerstone Church of Littlerock in Southern California. So glad to have you with us. As we're going through these devotionals, we're kind of just asking a couple of basic questions. First of all, what do we learn about God and his eternal plan? Okay. Secondly, how do we see God using the church? How do we see God working through the church? And finally, how do we see God working through individuals within the church and outside the church? And so as we come to Acts chapter 12, we're going to be doing exactly that as we go through our study. Here we go, Acts 12, verse 1. About the time Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church, he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the days of unleavened bread. And when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. Okay, so first let's take a look at this. We're going to talk about Peter here in a few moments, but let's just notice what's happening here. So about that time, 12:1, what's happening, this is about the same time that that there's famine and that there is, so the people from Antioch, as we talked about yesterday, the church people from Antioch came down to give money to the people in Jerusalem because they knew the famine would greatly affect the fellow believers. Want to make a quick comment on yesterday, or the previous devotional would be number 27. I showed you a map, and I realized that the map was titled Paul's Second Missionary Journey. However, I didn't use the map for the purpose of the journey, which is probably confusing because I didn't mention that yesterday. I used the map for the purpose of the locations of the places we were talking about here in Acts. So just to clear up any confusion, Acts 12 is not dealing with, Acts 11 or 12 is not dealing with Paul's second missionary journey. However, it's dealing with the locations of places that are on the same map as is in Paul's second missionary journey. So my apologies for being confusing with yesterday's map by not explaining that. But just merely used it for locations of nearby towns and cities so that you could get a quick look at those. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and take a look now at verses 1. First of all, we have that King Herod now has killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. So most believe that he probably beheaded him with the sword or had him beheaded. So James, one of the original apostles, is martyred. The leader of the church is martyred for just faith and his belief and trust in Jesus. What I find interesting here is how little it says about it. Okay, we don't get a conversation about the great mourning of the people, any uprising or things like that. We simply have it almost a matter-of-fact statement that Herod killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Now, the interesting thing which Luke seems to point us out to here in the book of Acts is that, and when he, Herod, saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. So he saw that the Jews were quite delighted that Herod had killed a Christ follower, a prominent Christian. And so Herod, wanting to continue to be in the good graces of the Jews, decided he would do the same to Peter. So the scripture is very clear. Why is Herod doing this? Because he wants to keep pleasing the Jews. Okay? So what does he do? He seizes Peter over Passover, the days of unleavened bread, seizes Peter. I find it interesting. He puts him in prison with 4 squads of soldiers to guard him. That's a lot of soldiers to guard one guy in prison. His plan is to bring him out to the people after the Passover and to have him killed as well, to please the Jews and threaten the Christians and tell them to quit following this Jesus who's died and risen from the dead. Okay? Now watch verse 6. Now when Herod was about to bring him out, on that very night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. Okay, remember, we got 4 squads, so 2 people sleeping with him and a whole bunch of other guys guarding doors and watching over. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly," and the chains fell off his hands. I find this interesting. Peter's not having a dream. The angels show up, and Peter's still sound asleep. The angel actually has to wake up Peter, So he wakes up Peter, okay, and says, "Get up quickly." The chains fall off his hands. Miraculously, the chains fall off his hands. You still have two sleeping guards besides Peter who are sound asleep. And the angel said to him, "Dress yourself, put on your sandals." He did so, okay, and he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." So Peter wakes up. He's probably just in a loincloth in prison, but apparently his sandals and his cloak are nearby. So he puts them on. He follows the angel out of the prison. He went out and followed him. He did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, though he thought he was seeing a vision. So Peter's woken up from his dream. He thinks he's still dreaming. He thinks his escape is just all a dream, a figment of his imagination in his mind. When they had passed the first and the second guard there may be individual person or may be squad of guards, okay, they came to the iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel left him. So he wakes up in his cell, miraculously woken up by the angel. Miraculously, the chains fall off him. Miraculously, they go past sleeping guards who don't wake, and they go through several sets of guards. They get to another iron gate at the very edge of the prison jail complex. That is open. He walks out of that one miraculously, and he finds himself in the town. And this is when the angel leaves him, and Peter wakes up. Verse 11, when Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting." When he realized this, so let's just stop there real quickly. Two quick comments we want to make here. One is we notice that God's will is beyond our own understanding. So God doesn't rescue James. James is martyred for his faith. However, Peter, before he is killed, is rescued for his faith. Is Peter more valuable than James? No. It's God's decision and determination in his divine sovereignty control who shall die and who shall live. Okay? So keep that in mind. All right? It doesn't make you more spiritual than the other to die, or it doesn't make you more spiritual to not to die. I have a favorite quote from Sammy Tippett. He writes in a book that he wrote decades ago that simply says, if I accomplish much for the king, I shall be happy. If I accomplish little for the king, I shall be happy. If I die in the battlefield for the king, I shall be happy. It's just a very simple reminder that it doesn't matter what happens to us. It matters how well we serve the king. Okay? In Corinthians, it says that God has assigned to each individual a task that God has called him to do. His job is to accomplish that task, and that is the rule in all the churches. So whatever task God has assigned to you, go forward and do it faithfully, whether that leads to your death or to your living, to your ending or miraculous rescue, or to none of the above, and just simple, quiet, unnoticed by all, faithful following of God. Do what God has assigned you to do. In fact, with that, why don't we just pause right there? Let's just think about that and realize that's what's happened in both cases. James follows the Lord, and it leads to his death. Peter follows the Lord, it leads to his rescue. Both men didn't wake up that morning and go, "Let me be arrested and killed for God. Let me be arrested and jailed and rescued for God." They woke up that morning and said, "Let me be a faithful follower of Jesus, my Lord, today." That should be your prayer and my prayer as well. Thanks for joining us today for Here Comes the Bride, the beginning of the church. Join me again next time.